The Warriors, 1979, wasn't just a gritty gang movie from the streets of New York. It was a full-blown urban mythology wrapped in chaos, fear, and pure cinematic rebellion. Behind the haunting street chants and leather vests were real fights, unsanctioned filming, and a production spiraling out of control. Actors were attacked, crews ran from riots, studios panicked, and somehow, through this madness, a cult classic was born. These are 20 weird facts about the Warriors, the kind of secrets that would make even Luther drop his bottles. But the bonus fact? It involves a real gang, a dangerous message, and a hidden reason Paramount tried to bury the film. Stay with us, and don't forget to bring the whole gang. 1. Real gangs were used, and they weren't acting. It wasn't a controlled film set, it was a war zone. Paramount hired actual New York street gangs to appear in the background of scenes for authenticity. But it backfired, badly. Some gang members didn't take direction, others brought real weapons. And more than a few saw this as an opportunity to settle real turf disputes while the cameras rolled. Director Walter Hill later admitted they had minimal control over certain outdoor scenes, especially the ones involving crowd action. One night, filming was disrupted when a real gang cornered cast and crew members, leading to a frantic evacuation. It wasn't choreography, it was survival. What audiences didn't know was that the danger on screen bled into the edges of the frame, and sometimes far beyond it. 2. The cast was constantly injured on set. The bruises were real. Filming in the streets, subways, and graffiti-tagged tunnels of New York at night meant the cast endured real injuries. Michael Beck, who played Swan, broke a finger during a fight scene. Deborah Van Valkenburg, who played Mercy, suffered cuts running barefoot on debris-littered streets. And Tom McKitterick, Vermin, got a chipped tooth during a stunt gone wrong. There wasn't always a stunt double waiting. And protective gear? Often non-existent. The Warriors were thrown into chaos night after night, bloody knuckles, bruised ribs, busted knees. But they kept shooting, because the camera never stopped, even when the pain was real. It wasn't acting, it was endurance. 3. The opening scene was shot without permits. The iconic gathering at Van Cortlandt Park? Totally illegal. Paramount didn't secure proper filming permits for that massive nighttime scene with hundreds of extras. Why? Because they feared that applying for the permits would tip off rival gangs or invite police interference. Instead, they snuck in and shot it fast, under cover of night. Crew members were instructed to work like a guerrilla film unit. Lights were minimal, camera setups were rushed, and security was, let's say, optional. It gave the scene an eerie, charged energy. But it also meant that if law enforcement had shown up, everything could have been shut down in an instant. The city never gave permission. But the streets? They welcomed the chaos. 4. The baseball Furies were inspired by kiss-painted faces, bats in hand, that haunting stare. The baseball Furies became one of the most unforgettable gangs in the Warriors, but their look wasn't born from street culture. It was glam rock meets nightmare fuel. Director Walter Hill has said he drew inspiration directly from Kiss, specifically their black and white makeup and theatrical presence. But to make it more threatening, he crossed it with Yankees uniforms and silent aggression. The result was a gang that never spoke, only chased and swung hard. It wasn't a street gang, it was an abstract terror, performance art with a Louisville slugger. And yet, in that silence, the Furies became louder than any dialogue. 5. James Remar was almost fired for being too violent. James Remar, who played Ajax, the hot-headed bruiser of the group, nearly lost his job. His intense method approach bled off screen. He'd stay in character even when the cameras stopped rolling. One night, Remar got into a fight with a crew member, and another time he reportedly smashed a prop in a fit of rage. Director Walter Hill didn't want to fire him, but the producers grew nervous. Remar's real-life aggression mirrored Ajax's, and with a volatile set already spiraling, his behavior became a liability. In the end, Remar stayed, but just barely. It wasn't performance. It was dangerously close to the truth. 6. The film's score was composed in just 3 weeks. Barry Dvorzan's synth-heavy, pulsing score helped define the Warriors' dreamlike urban tone. But few know he was given less than a month to create it. The studio originally wanted a more traditional orchestral score, but Hill fought for something modern, electric, and edgy. Dvorzan composed most of the themes in a rented studio apartment with a single keyboard and no assistant. He had 21 days to deliver everything, from the haunting opening chords to the explosive action cues. Despite the rush, the soundtrack became iconic, cited by artists from Daft Punk to Trent Reznor as a major influence. What sounds timeless was, in reality, a creative sprint against the clock. 7. The film sparked real-life violence. Upon release, it was supposed to be just a movie, but when the Warriors hit theaters in February 1979, chaos erupted. Within the first 2 weeks, several violent incidents were reported across the U.S., including 3 fatal stabbings, allegedly connected to gang clashes during or after screenings. In L.A., rival gang members opened fire outside a screening. Paramount went into full panic mode. They pulled all television advertising and left it to theaters to decide whether or not to screen the film. The message was clear. This movie wasn't fiction anymore. It was influencing the streets. 8. Paramount tried to kill the movie. After the violent incidents tied to the Warriors' release, Paramount nearly buried the film. Studio executives considered pulling it from distribution entirely. Instead, they slashed the promotional budget, canceled its nationwide expansion, and issued statements distancing themselves from the film. Posters were torn down, billboards removed. But something unexpected happened. Word of mouth took over. Fans began treating the movie like forbidden fruit, something you had to see before it disappeared. Bootleg screenings popped up. Ticket sales rose in certain cities. By the time the studio realized its mistake, the Warriors had already cemented itself as a cult phenomenon. The attempt to silence the film only made it louder. 9. The original cut had comic book transitions. You may have seen the director's cut, but that's not how the film originally played. Walter Hill always envisioned the Warriors as a living comic book. His early cuts included full-frame comic panels that transitioned between scenes. Characters would freeze, and the frame would morph into drawn art before shifting into the next sequence. But Paramount hated it. They forced him to cut those sequences for the original 1979 release, arguing it made the film too weird and alienating. Only decades later, in the 2005 director's cut, did Hill finally get his vision restored. The irony? That weirdness was exactly what made the movie unforgettable. 10th. A famous fight scene. Was improvised, that brutal bathroom brawl with the punks? Totally unscripted. The scene in the subway station restroom, where the Warriors face off against the roller skating gang known as the Punks, wasn't storyboarded in detail. Walter Hill gave the actors a general directive: make it chaotic, make it painful, and make it fast. So they did. With breakable tiles, real fixtures, and minimal choreography, the scene became one of the film's most visceral moments. And the fans noticed. It's now considered one of the most influential fight scenes of the 70s. Not planned, just raw. If you're loving these gritty revelations, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we've still got gang warfare, stolen scenes, and a secret real-world message hidden in the finale coming up next. 11. The studio didn't want Michael Beck as the lead. Michael Beck may be synonymous with Swan, but Paramount initially didn't want him. Studio execs pushed for a more conventionally handsome or bankable face. They suggested TV stars and even disco-era heartthrobs to play the gang's stoic leader. But director Walter Hill had a different vision. He saw Beck in Mad Men, a little-known film, and was struck by his quiet intensity. Hill fought tooth and nail to cast him, going so far as to threaten walking away if Beck was replaced. Ironically, Beck's understated performance became the emotional anchor of the film. His silence, confidence, and steely gaze defined Swan, and gave the audience someone to root for amidst the chaos. Not a star, not a big name, but exactly the Warrior Hill needed. 12. The L train was never shut down for filming. The Warriors spend much of the movie navigating New York's gritty subway lines, especially the L train. But here's the wild part. The MTA never gave them permission to shut down the tracks. Instead, the production squeezed into off-peak hours, shot scenes in moving trains, and occasionally bribed transit workers to look the other way. Entire fight scenes were filmed between scheduled runs, with crews scrambling to clear gear the moment they heard a real train coming. During one sequence, actors had to pause mid-fight as an unexpected train pulled up, forcing them to freeze and pretend to be passengers. No permits, no rerouting, just pure hustle. What you see on screen is the result of timing, luck, and a lot of broken rules. 13. The Lizzy scene had to be toned down. Drastically originally, the all-female gang known as the Lizzys had a much darker role. In early draft and early cuts, their scene wasn't just about seduction and betrayal. It ended in outright bloodshed. The script had them stabbing one of the warriors and leaving him to die in their lair. But test audiences reacted poorly to the violence, especially coming from female characters. The studio panicked and demanded that the scene be trimmed and softened. The stabbing was cut, the dialogue rewritten, and the Lizzys were turned into a seductive but less lethal threat. Walter Hill wasn't thrilled, but he complied. Still, the threat lingers. The Lizzys remain one of the film's most chilling gangs, not because of what they did, but because of what they almost did. 14. David Patrick Kelly wrote his iconic line on the spot. Warriors had come out to play A. It wasn't in the script. That iconic line, delivered with spine-chilling glee by David Patrick Kelly's Luther, was entirely improvised. Kelly based the line on a terrifying neighbor he had as a kid who used to taunt people from his porch, clinking bottles together and whispering threats. During one take, Kelly grabbed a few beer bottles, slipped them on his fingers, and delivered the line in a sing-song voice that stunned everyone on set. Walter Hill loved it. The crew froze, the bottles clinked, and a piece of cinematic history was born, not written, but summoned from memory and madness. 15. A stunt almost killed a crew member on the train platform. One of the most dangerous moments in the film wasn't even on camera. During a nighttime shoot at a subway platform, a crew member misjudged the timing of an approaching train while resetting a light rig. The platform was narrow, crowded, and dimly lit. As the train roared into the station, the worker tripped, his leg briefly dangling over the edge. A nearby grip lunged and pulled him back just in time. No official incident report was filed because no one wanted to shut the production down. But those on set still remember the chilling near-death moment. It was a reminder. The danger wasn't just in the gangs or the streets, it was everywhere. 16. Walter Hill originally wanted the movie to be set in the future. The grimy, graffiti-streaked New York of the Warriors feels like dystopia, but it was almost literal. Director Walter Hill originally envisioned the story as a full-blown science fiction. Inspired by comic books and Greek mythology, he imagined a decayed future where gangs had become the ruling class and cities were lawless zones. Paramount, however, wanted something more grounded, so the future concept was scrapped. Still, traces of the original vision remained. The gang costumes, stylized violence, and heightened dialogue all feel like a world just beyond our own. Not the future, but not quite the present either. 17. The actor playing Cyrus was almost cut from the film. Can you dig it? Roger Hill's thunderous performance as Cyrus is one of the film's most quoted and electrifying moments. But Paramount wanted to cut it entirely. They thought the speech was too theatrical, too long, and made the film feel like a stage play. Hill's booming Shakespearean tone, his gestures, the near-spiritual rallying cry, it all made executives uncomfortable. They demanded that Hill either tone it down or be replaced. Walter Hill refused. He believed Cyrus needed to be larger than life, a prophet in leather gloves, the kind of leader whose words could actually stop every gang in New York. Thankfully, Hill got his way, and Hill's delivery of "Can you dig it?" became a battle cry for every misfit who saw themselves in the shadows of the city. 18. The Warriors were originally supposed to be an all-black gang. In the original novel by Saul Urich, the Warriors are an all-black gang from Coney Island, and the story focuses heavily on racial tensions and socio-political dynamics in 1960s New York. Walter Hill's early adaptation kept this aspect intact, but the studio grew nervous. They feared the film would be pigeonholed or spark controversy amid ongoing racial tensions in America. So Paramount insisted the gang be racially mixed and cast a white lead. Hill, frustrated but wanting to keep the project alive, reluctantly agreed. He still cast actors of various ethnicities and kept elements of the Warriors' outsider identity intact. What could have been a bold political statement was retooled into a more ambiguous urban parable, still powerful but less direct, not erased, just softened. 19. The ending was reshot to soften the message. Originally, the Warriors ended on a much darker note. In the first cut, the gang makes it back to Coney Island only to find their home overrun. Nothing left to fight for. There was no redemption, no walk on the beach, no final confrontation with Luther. Just defeat and a bitter reminder that survival doesn't equal peace. But Paramount hated the bleak tone. They wanted closure, something that could give audiences a breath of relief after the chaos. So the beach showdown was added. The symbolic morning light, the defeat of Luther, the slow, triumphant walk into the waves. Walter Hill admitted he preferred the original, but understood the need to give audiences something to hold on to. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was, at least, an ending. 20. The Warriors were blamed for a New York subway vandalism surge. After the film's release, New York City saw a sudden uptick in graffiti on subway cars. Reporters pointed the finger at the Warriors. Teenagers copied the gang's logos, sprayed Warriors on train cars, and even formed real-life groups mimicking the fictional gangs. Transit officials decried the film for glorifying lawlessness and blamed it for inspiring vandalism across the boroughs. In response, Paramount was forced to issue a public statement denying any connection and emphasizing that The Warriors was a fantasy, not an endorsement. Still, it was too late. The movie had tapped into something primal, something raw and real in the city's youth. And whether or not it caused the spray paint to fly, it certainly made the walls speak louder. Bonus fact: a real gang issued a death threat over the film. This wasn't marketing hype, it was real. After The Warriors was released, a notorious Bronx-based gang reportedly issued an anonymous warning to Paramount and the filmmakers. "You're profiting off our lives. You better not come filming in our turf again." Why? Because the film's portrayal of stylized gangs, especially the outfits, symbols, and territory rivalries, mirrored real dynamics happening in the boroughs at the time. One gang, which some believe inspired the baseball Furies, felt mocked. Another thought the fictional Gramercy Riffs were a thinly veiled version of their real-life organization. According to a crew member, the warning was delivered through intermediaries, no names, no signatures, just a clear threat. Paramount immediately canceled any plans for a sequel or follow-up shoots in the city. The message was loud. The Warriors may have been fiction, but its ripples were very real and very dangerous. If you dug these secrets and want more gritty deep dives into cult classics and behind-the-scenes legends, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment with your favorite Warriors gang.